I call the member for Fadden.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to lend some brief comments on the government's Cybercrime Legislation Amendment Bill 2011. Whilst the Coalition broadly supports the bill, a range of concerns have been raised that the Coalition speakers have previously moved through. In its most simplest form, the bill seeks to require carriers and carriage service providers to preserve the stored communications and telecommunications data for specified persons when requested by certain domestic agencies, to ensure agencies are able to obtain and disclose telecommunications data and stored communications for the purposes of foreign investigation, to provide for extraterritorial operation of certain offences. It will amend the computer crime offences in the Criminal Code Act and create confidentiality requirements in relation to authorisations to disclose telecommunications data. The Joint Select Committee on Cyber Safety's review of the bill came up with a range of recommendations in their final report. The committee took the approach of ensuring that thresholds that apply to domestic investigation are equally applied to foreign countries seeking access to communication materials of Australians. One of the recommendations proposed that the Australian Federal Police guidelines on police-to-police cooperation in possible death penalty scenarios be tightened and should only occur in exceptional circumstances and with the consent of the relevant ministers, in this case the Attorney-General and the Minister for Home Affairs, Justice Minister. A range of recommendations like that have been put forward. Whilst we support the objectives of the bill and are broadly satisfied with the safeguards that the Attorney-General has put forward, we remain concerned and will watch with great interest that the legislation operates as the Attorney-General intends it to operate. There were a range of submissions to the committee which complained about the convention didn't contain sufficiently robust privacy and civil liberty protections to offset the increased surveillance and information sharing powers it implements. The powers governing the real-time collection and preservation of computer data were identifying as being of some concern. However, powers for mass surveillance, such as wiretapping, eavesdropping, the other of the black arts, are not enhanced by this legislation because the amendments are limited to telecommunications legislation, which still requires the issue of warrant and do not extend to surveillance devices. I will make the point, whilst the Coalition broadly supports the direction of the bill and where it's going, that the government continues or must continue to address the issue of cybersecurity, not just in terms of the legislation basis, but in terms of our capacity to protect. There is no question that the asymmetric art of cyber attack is growing and is one of the most pervasive and fastest growing asymmetric means of attack, not only globally but within our region. I broadly supported the Cyber Security Operations Centre in May 2009 when the then Minister, who I may say was 2 ministers ago, we're now in our 3rd Minister of Defence in 4 years, but well, the first Minister, when he launched it, it was broadly supported, the intent being to maximise the government's ability to detect and rapidly respond to fast-evolving aggressive cyber attacks. The original funding was something like $14 million. The intent was a continuously staffed watch office and analysis team able to respond immediately to cybersecurity threats as they are detected. The new centre was established in DSD, which incidentally also possesses its own significant cybersecurity expertise. It would be good if the government would report back on exactly how the Cybersecurity Centre is progressing, how it's going, how the 24-hour watch is progressing, and it would be good to get some statistics with respect to the amount of asymmetric cyber attack the nation is experiencing. I am concerned, however, that the former head of the military cyber unit has called on the government to speed up its response to the emerging cyber arms race, saying more funding is needed for key civilian agencies. Tim Scully, who's the former head, was reported as saying these comments by Dylan Walsh, the national security correspondent. It does bring to the fore the issue and the question, is the government doing enough in terms of protecting the nation from the threat of cybersecurity and ensuring law enforcement agencies and others have access to the legislation they need to ensure they can do their job. In terms of the Cybercrime Legislation Amendment Bill, I've taken the Attorney-General on his word that the safeguards are in place. that the legislation is indeed there for the manner and the purpose in which he needs it to be for law enforcement and other purposes. But I would stress to the Attorney-General, who's sitting at the desk here this morning, we need to continue to stay at the forefront when it comes to cyber security, to cyber legislation and defeating the asymmetric attacks that cybercrime and foreign espionage services will use in this space. It is fundamental that Australia maintains a leading technological edge in dealing with cyber security and the threats they pose to national security and the national interests of the country.